Recently at STH, we were doing a project that I thought was going to be a ton of fun. We were building new storage servers for both our studio as well as some of our hosting clusters. And when we did that, we ran into a problem that I realized a lot of other folks are probably running into in the industry. And that problem is we built a whole bunch of servers to go and deploy, and then we ended up, even though they were mostly free to put together, we ended up going and pulling them out, and we're going to be installing different platforms in them. And I'm going to explain why. Hey guys, this is Patrick from STH, and today we're going to talk about why we ended up pulling out some of the ARM server platforms that we were planning on deploying and instead replace them with AMD EPYC 8004 Sienna series. Now, of course, these are not the highest end AMD EPYC platforms, but on the other hand, it was something that when we did it, I think we were building because we wanted to do something that we thought was kind of cool and trendy, but then we kind of got to the practical level of it and realized, well, we needed to do a little rethink. Now at STH, we've been reviewing ARM servers since they became somewhat practical to use in maybe, I don't know, April of 2016 with Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. That was the first release where things went from absolutely terrible to, well, you could almost use ARM platforms in production with the Cavium Thunder X. And ever since 2016, it's pretty hard to not notice the fact that we have things like Raspberry Pis that are all over the place with very low cost, low performance ARM processors. We also, at the higher end, a lot of the cloud providers are using ARM processors. But on the other hand, if you're an enterprise data center, if you're a business that is not putting stuff into the cloud or have stuff that you don't want to have in the cloud because it's frankly usually way less expensive to not use the cloud. If that's the case, you're probably finding it's hard to put ARM servers into your infrastructure. And I want to talk about why, because there are things that certainly need to change. Now, we're going to say that, of course, we are using some stuff from ASRock Rack. Also, we have some AMD stuff, and we're primarily going to be using AMD here, so we're going to say that they're sponsoring this. But on the other hand, just know that, like, number one, AMD makes ARM processors, like in things like their Pensando NICs, their Xilinx FPGAs, so they're not, like anti-ARM by any means. And frankly, we've been using them for years. But I think that just from a practical perspective, there are things that folks just kind of overlook, and we ran into them like a brick wall on this project. So let's get into the hardware and why that is. This is the ASRock Rack platform that we bought, and we thought, hey, there's a number of reasons that this makes a lot of sense. First off, when we were deploying our new systems, we had, well, I guess, some extra Ampere ARM chips that we had bought. These are the Ampere Ultra Max chips. And then we also had a bunch of DDR4 memory. We just have so much DDR4 memory from that generation that it was pretty easy to go find 8 64 gig DIMMs for 512 gigs total. Aside from that, we needed some boot drives, which are not very expensive. And then the goal of this was really upfront. We have 10 2.5-inch SSD bays. And one of the things that I've really wanted to do for the longest time is to remove hard drives completely from our hosting clusters. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but on the other hand, if I look back over the last 5 years, the only components that we have had fail in any of the hosting clusters that we have been hard drives. And since we have a few of them in backup servers, the idea behind this platform was that we could put larger capacity SSDs and just get rid of all of those hard drives that we're using. And then over time, of course, if we want to go add more, we can do that. But I just thought, hey, let's do a project to go take all of our archival footage and go put it onto, something that's not hard drive based. And so all seemed well and good, right? We were going to go build backup storage, and that was something that, of course, you don't really need that much CPU to go do. You don't need that much memory. We had enough SSD and NVMe connectivity that kind of worked, and we thought that it overall was going to be a good idea. The biggest question is with our growth rate of things like, using new cameras like this one that Sam is using right here, it was really a question of should we use 15 terabyte or 30 terabyte SSDs, just because, I'll just tell you guys, if you look back about a year and a half ago, our data that we're generating per month on STH has gone up by about a terabyte per month. It started to become a challenge just on capacity, just if we want to go and archive all of our footage. And so even though we had everything we would need to go and build this all, we had our free memory essentially because we were using stuff that we already had. We had CPUs that were extra. We also, had bought the servers. They weren't that expensive. And so we thought this was going to be a great platform. We are going to end up replacing all of the motherboards in here and processors with the AMD EPYC 8004 series, which is codenamed Sienna. And there are a couple reasons for that I really want to get into. But I just want to show you guys real quick. This is the actual motherboard and like a setup that we would use, which is the Sienna D8UD3. Now we've already done a motherboard review of this, and we're actually going to have this in a hard drive based server review that was probably going to go live before we publish this video. So we've actually used this motherboard in a number of places, and I feel very comfortable with this platform. The ability to use the AMD EPYC 8004 series, plus, we have 6 channels of DDR5 memory. We can also put that extra DIMM in if we want. We have our MCIO connectors, which are right here for handling our SSDs. You could also run SATA off them, but we're not going to be doing that. We're really going to be focused more on running SSDs. And then we can have our boot drives here, which gives us the ability to go and have those extra boot drives. We'll have a riser here, and this is what will give us the ability to have a high-speed NIC in the back, because this is only a 1 gigabit per second platform, at least at its base. But I want to get into one of the big reasons why. Now, when we're installing these, especially in the data center, something I realized was that if we had installed this Ampere Ultra Max server and this platform, we'd be doing something that I did not want, actually. And that was that we would have both ARM and x86. Now, some folks I know that are going to watch this and from like home labbing and stuff like that are going to say, oh, that's so cool and that's great. But from a business perspective, I realized that we couldn't do that. And the reason is because, we only have a certain amount of power and space in all of our racks. Now, usually we are power limited, and we've been power limited for a long time. But on the other hand, we just frankly, you can only put so many boxes into a rack, and then you just kind of run out of space and power. And so when we install things in there, one of the things I like to have is the ability for boxes to handle more than one workload. Now, one of the big things that we use in our data centers is we use Proxmox VE. And so one of the huge challenges with Proxmox VE is just the fact that there's no native ARM version right now. Now, you can get Proxmox working on ARM, but then you're pretty much using a project like this off of GitHub instead of going and just, using Proxmox VE native and x86. Also, if you want to do things like get support for your Proxmox VE nodes, well, if you're running this, then that's obviously not something that you'd expect to get support on, versus if you're running something with the supported enterprise repos and all that kind of stuff, you'd expect that you're able to go and get support. So it's just kind of like if you're running a production platform, it's a big difference than something that you're just labbing. And all of our x86 compatible VMs, which are actually running on, frankly, a lot of them are running on like Milan and stuff like that in terms of AMD EPYC generations. Those VMs, if we want to go and run them on a backup server one day just because we need extra capacity or just something is happening, well, if we had to do that, then, it's just put them onto the new platform here, versus if we were to go and do that on the ARM platform, we would have to go redo the entire VM, and it just takes more time, and I don't want to deal with that. Again, this is the difference between a production cluster and a lab cluster. And that to me really brings up a good point, because that's exactly what's happening in the enterprise space, and we've seen it happen on STH. And so something you'll notice is that the actual enterprise adoption of ARM servers is very low, especially for things that are on-prem and co-located. Now, where you do see a little bit more ARM adoption is, of course, in the hyperscalers. And I wanted to kind of dissect that because I think it's something that, just from an industry analyst perspective, is really interesting. So when you go to different cloud providers, what you'll notice is that many of them do offer ARM servers. And in fact, they offer ARM servers usually at a discounted price. Now, one of the reasons that they always give is because they say like, ARM chips are way, way less expensive and all that kind of stuff. But let me just kind of give you some thoughts, right? First off, the price, when we say list price and we do those like in reviews of server chips, the list price that we have is very different between, what a cloud provider would pay and what you see as an MSRP on a chip, right? The cloud providers all have their own custom versions of chips. And frankly, if they're all using, say, TSMC as their fab process, then an AMD EPYC and an ARM processor are actually going to be pretty darn close. In fact, if you were to go look at an ARM processor versus an x86 processor, it's actually a lot closer than you might think. And just to give you some idea of why the actual pricing is a lot closer than you might think, this is an AMD EPYC 9004 series processor. I just realized I had it on set and just broke it out of this kind of little case so we can show you. But you'll see here, this middle part is the I/O die. So this has our memory controllers, and it also has our PCIe controllers. Then we have our CCDs, which have our x86 cores, in this case our Zen 4 cores. But even these chips are not all x86. Instead, a huge portion of them is SRAM for our caches, as well as things like our interconnects back to the I/O die and various other features. So assuming you're using the same TSMC process for something like your AMD EPYC chip versus your cloud hyperscale ARM processor, well, then, you're only a portion of this is really talking about x86 versus ARM. You can just see how much silicon is really, going to be relatively the same between the two parties. And so if you're a large hyperscaler, how you actually go price these chips and you go to like someone like an Intel or an AMD, you'd actually go and say, okay, I know how much TSMC charges for a wafer. I can figure out your defect density. Here's how much silicon you actually have. Here's some, adder for packaging and stuff like that. And you're essentially doing cost plus some bit of margin. It's not just cost, right? It's cost plus margin. This will go to AMD and say, okay, this is how much we're going to give you for a chip. That's how hyperscale CPUs are priced. So when you hear folks look at a hyperscale CPU or an ARM CPU pricing versus MSRP for an AMD EPYC chip, it's a completely different ballgame. And just want to make sure that everybody understands that, the hyperscalers are not paying anywhere near MSRP for their chips. So of course, if pricing is more like that, then what's really going on when we see the big deltas between an ARM and an x86 instance? Well, the idea is actually that the cloud guys are using their ARM chips kind of as like a Hotel California situation, right? You can go and port your workloads to ARM, but it's really hard to repatriate your workloads and take them off of a cloud instance and move them back to a data center. In fact, it's even hard to move them, by the way, between different cloud providers, because I'll just give you an example, like this Ampere ARM chip over here. This is an Ampere Ultra Max, which means you don't have features like nested virtualization. So if that's something that you want and you get on a different cloud provider, but you want to move to a different cloud provider that gives you the Ultra Max, well, you're going to run into an instance where, well, you can't have nested virtualization. It's a very common feature that you just can't do on these platforms. And moving from cloud provider to cloud provider is rough, but kind of like what we experienced, moving from a cloud provider to on-prem ARM is way harder. Now for us, because we review servers, I'm pretty comfortable running something like a ASRock rack server, but there are a lot of enterprises, frankly, that are going to want to run like Dell, HPE, Lenovo, or something like that. And if you were to go to those large traditional ecosystems and you want to go run an ARM server, Lenovo had some development boxes back in the day, and they have some Chinese market specific SKUs and stuff that you can run if you're there. But if you're like a US-based enterprise, you just don't have access to that. Instead, you might have access to something like this, an HPE ProLiant RL300 Gen 11. And we reviewed this back almost 2 years ago, around 2 years ago in June of 2023. And there were a couple of folks that adopted that really because they wanted to go run web servers on it and things of that nature. But in terms of overall enterprise adoption, this did not do super well. And the reason for that was, frankly, that a lot of organizations did exactly what we did with some twists. Like, for example, if you want to go migrate your VMs from x86 to ARM, you kind of run into a challenge where you don't actually have the ability to do that. We're talking about Proxmox because, well, that's what we've been using for years, and I think that's become a lot more popular over the last couple of years. But let's say that you are a more traditional enterprise and you're running VMware. VMware has had ESXi on ARM for some time. In fact, we've looked at it both on the AMD Pensando DPUs as well as running it on the NVIDIA Bluefield DPUs. So we have pieces that we did a little while ago on that, but we have actually used ESXi on ARM in the context of doing DPUs. But in the context of CPUs, you would never in a million years want to go and run VMware ESXi on an ARM CPU today. And while you can do it with things like Flings, at the end of the day, if you're licensed on a per socket and per core basis, you would always want to get the highest performance cores that you can. And so you wouldn't want something that's a low performance core designed more for like web servers. And really the proof there is in the pudding. We don't see a ton of folks running like production ESXi clusters on ARM. Most folks are at best running DPUs on ARM, and that I guess works. But when you're talking about mainline VM infrastructure, you're not running that if you're running VMware on ARM these days. And that same idea extends to a lot of other enterprise applications that are licensed on a per core basis. If you have an application that's licensed on a per core basis, you would much rather have a high performance core and pretty much the highest performance core you can. So something like, a say Genoa X or another platform where you have just a ton of cache and a lot of clock speed, that's a much better platform than running it on something that's designed to really be a low performance, lower power core that's designed for things like running Nginx web servers. Okay, now in all of our videos, I like to have key lessons learned, like what did we learn from this entire exercise? And I think the reason I wanted to do this was really that we spend a lot of money, like a good amount of money actually, buying these servers thinking that we could use our free components to go and create very low cost virtualization platforms for not just our hosting clusters, but also for the studio. It frankly involves hundreds of terabytes of data. And at that point, it's something that, we need to start thinking about how do we manage that data and what platforms do we want that data to be on? And it's also going into existing facilities, right? Where we have other servers that are running other services for us. And so one of the things that we learned was that even though we went and bought these servers and we had some free components, it actually wasn't free. The fact is that losing the ability to take a workload and just move it directly onto one of these nodes, that flexibility and portability was something that we realized that we valued more than just being able to, reuse some components and save a couple dollars on the component cost. In fact, we're going to spend more money, but even spending more money, it ends up making sense because, well, then we don't have to run an unsupported version of Proxmox VE. We don't have to run some different piece of software, so we can, we don't have something that doesn't sit in our cluster nicely. But I think what we really learned was that that's a microcosm of what's going on right now in the enterprise industry. If you want an ARM server, well, your options are you can use a pretty darn old, like an Ampere Ultra Max that's still current generation. I know there's Ampere 1 servers from a couple vendors, but you don't really see them from Dell, HPE, and Lenovo. So I don't really know what you're gonna do in terms of, if you have a Dell, HP, or Lenovo shop, you're running things with iDRAC, ILO, or xClarity, well, you need a platform that you can go run a workload on. Otherwise, you can't really run your ARM infrastructure, right? So I think that's a big challenge right now in the industry. And at this point, let's face it, if you're on the x86 ecosystem, Intel is getting more competitive, but AMD still has the high-end 192 core, 384 thread chips, and they just have a bunch of SKUs that are really, really performant in the industry. So I think that, from a performance perspective, AMD is definitely ahead. But if you're on x86, you can go and take your VMs that were running on Intel Xeon and run them on AMD. In the future, you could in fact go backwards, right? You could go AMD to Intel and whatever the heck you want, but there's an entire ecosystem there that makes it really easy to go import workloads. And let's say you're running things in the cloud or you're running a hybrid cloud, which is very common these days. Once you go to ARM on a hybrid cloud, then you have to go and worry about, do you have features, like simple features like nested virtualization on your cloud instance if you go from one cloud to another cloud, depending on which CPU you use, especially as more cloud providers are doing custom ARM things. That's something that will be a challenge. And the same challenge is happening to organizations right now as they're going through this hybrid cloud journey and they're realizing, hey, I want to go and move things off of the public cloud because, frankly, I can run it way less expensively, especially if it's a baseline workload on my own servers. Folks can do that, and I think they're running into the same problem, right? If you port to ARM, how do you go and get a server to even run it in your own data center? That's a challenge today. At the end of the day, we've been reviewing ARM servers for years. I totally see why in some markets they make a lot of sense, but at the end of the day, even as someone who has been, using ARM servers for 9+ years at this point, frankly, it's still hard today to go and deploy them, not because it wouldn't run an application. You can 100% go and run a storage server based on ARM. That's 100% possible. But when you want to integrate it into the rest of your infrastructure, if you have existing infrastructure, it's kind of a pain. And I don't like the fact that it is. In fact, that's exactly why in our infrastructure, we're moving from the low-cost ARM platform or lower-cost ARM platform to spending a little bit more on the AMD EPYC platform. But if you look at things like cloud instances, people are doing the exact same thing in the cloud and they're doing it in the enterprise market. So I don't know, I just kind of thought it's worth getting that out there because I think that it's something that we don't really talk about enough. And I just thought it was time to, it's summertime and why not go do it now? And if you did like this video and you just want to go explain some of the market dynamics behind this whole thing, well, why don't you share it with your friends and colleagues, but also give it a like, click subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you can see whenever we come out with great new videos. As always, thanks for watching and have an awesome day.